grace and His mercy and all that He is to us. And we could do nothing without Him, and I'm so thankful for all that He has done for me. For most of all, thankful for salvation, full and free, and how that He died on that cross for our sins and for my sins. I know He died for the whole world, but when you think about the individually, He died for me, and it's just amazing that someone would love somebody like me enough to die on the cross for my sins, and He did the same thing for you. So I'm so thankful for a loving God and someone who cares about us that much. But as we look today, as we get started into the day, we want to jump into the verse of the day, which comes to us from Romans chapter 15 and verse 2, which says, "Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification." And when we look at this verse, it's hard for us to think about pleasing our neighbors sometimes, because it's like, as Robert Frost wrote, good fences make good neighbors. And sometimes we live by that motto because we just don't want to have anything to do with our neighbors that are beside us. But Jesus asked the question, who is your neighbor? And then He followed up with the story about uh, the Good Samaritan. Excuse me, it just went blank for a minute. I thought about it all morning, but he followed up with the story about the Good Samaritan, and then in the story of the Good Samaritan, we know that the Jews and Samaritans hated each other. They just did not like each other at all, and they would do anything that they could to keep from being in contact with one another most of the time. And they just had very little dealings, if any, with each other. But one day there was a Jew that, or a Jewish man that was robbed and beaten severely and left in a ditch. And it was a Levite that came along, and somebody that's supposed to follow the law and been there to be a minister to the people, but it was the Levite that passed by and looked upon him and would not help the man. And then there was the priest that came along, and he looked down on him, and if anybody, you'd think that it would have been him, but that would help, but he looked on him and passed on by. And but then there was a Samaritan man that came along, and he picked him up, and he tried to clean him off the best that he could, and he took him to an inn, took him somewhere so that he could get the help that he needed, and even paid the way for the man to get his took care of, and then you could almost say he paid his hospital bill for him. And as he did that, then he told the innkeeper, said, if there's anything else that I owe or that this man owes, I'll pay it whenever I can't come back through. And then Jesus asked the question, who was, out of a three, who was it that was the neighbor to the man that had the need? And of course it was the Samaritan. They had to swallow their pride and admit that, yes, it was the Samaritan. So whenever we look at this verse in Romans, and we see this and see it says, let every one of us please his neighbor for his good edification. Let's lift our neighbors up, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is, where they come from. Let's lift up one another today, and it will be a great blessing for us. That's what God has called us to do, is to lift one another up. And too many times we want to fight, and we want to fuss, and we want to put people down. But that's not what God called us to do. God calls us to lift one another up. So let's try to find somebody today to do just that and lift each other up today as we continue on. Friend, I hope that you have a great day today. Hope that the Lord will bless you in a mighty way as we go forward in this week. And hope that you can find God's goodness in somebody today, or maybe it's your turn that somebody, maybe it would be good for somebody to say a kind word to you today. Well, before you can get somebody to, sometimes before you can get somebody to say a kind word to you, you have to say a kind word to somebody else. So try it out and see if it works, and God may bless you today in a mighty way. Friend, again, hope that you have a great day today. Hope that the Lord will bless you in a mighty way, and hope to see you again tomorrow morning for another edition of First Things First. May God bless you is our prayers.